Good morning, and welcome to Exploring Hyperspace Lanes. I am Adam on this very rainy Wednesday. Yes, indeed, it is Wednesday, not Thursday, because I watched all 3 episodes of Andor last night, and I gotta say, as someone who stayed up to watch this last episode of Andor, I'm not particularly thrilled about that. Because it's like, look, there are some things in the last episode that work. The 2 before it, 10 and 11, fantastic. Entirely up to the standard that we have come to expect from this show. 100% up to that standard. But the issue is, like, that last episode is just kind of weak, especially to go out on. There are some moments that I think work pretty well. Like, I think bringing in Hemmick's speech and playing that is a powerful thing to go out on. Deidre, after all she did to help the Empire, ending up in the same prison Andor was in, is just a great way to send that character off. But at the same time, it's like, my issue with this is we're playing with the audience knowing something, and I think they did that very well in season 1. The idea that, like, we know what the Death Star is, and throughout the season they did a good job of it too, because, like, we know what the Death Star is. We know what Krennic is up to. Like, what's this energy program that they're actually working on? We know what that all is. But the people in the show don't. It's a very closely held secret that they're building this super weapon. We know the Death Star is under construction. But for us to get to the episode, that's like, this is going to lead directly into Rogue One, because, like, the episode ends with Cassian Andor and K2SO getting in the ship to go to the planet to rescue Jyn. Like, for so much episode to be like, well, does the Death Star actually exist? It reminds me of, in the worst ways, Iron Fist, where you have that same thing through the first 2 episodes. We know that this guy is Danny Rand. No one believes him. So we spend like 2 episodes of him going to go, hi, I'm Danny Rand. It's like, no, you're not. Danny Rand's dead. It's like, well, let's not do this. We know. And it's the same thing here. We know the Death Star is imminent. Because that's the thing, is we're watching this and it's like, we are getting close to the point where, like, everyone on this planet is going, like, we know Bail has days to live. Because Bail's going to go back to Alderaan and get blown up when the Death Star gets there. Like, we know that, like, we are, like, the Galactic Civil War is about to kick off in a big bad way. But we're sitting here and we're like, well, is the Death Star actually, like, no, we know the Death Star is real. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, is like, look, it's one thing to play with the fact that we know something and the characters in the show don't, but in this case, in the season finale, don't do that. Like, there's a pretty big dots to connect that I don't think they did a great job of connecting between like what information they have. Galen Erso, they're mining Kyber on Jeddah, and they are and Gorman they were mining it for whatever. It's all connected. There are some pretty big fucking dots to connect between that shit. And I don't think they do a great job of connecting those dots. Like, to get from there to get to, and now we gotta go find Jyn, because Jyn will know where her father is, and it's just kind of a weird situation. Like, why would you do it that way? And it's one of those things where it's like, this show has been historically so great. Like, this is, who was it? Deshaun Jackson dropping the ball on the 1-yard line because he was celebrating too soon. That's what this feels like. Because either way, the 2 episodes leading up, like the episode, like the first episode of the batch of 3 that aired last night, which is mostly, like, Andor's not in it at all. It's entirely backstory for Clea and Luthen. And it's like, it's fantastic. The story of how these two met, what got them together, how they grew in this relationship. That whole thing is just so good. And that moment very early on in the episode is one of my favorites of this show, when Deidre shows up at Luthen's, at Luthen's, gallery. At first, they're both playing, like, oh, well, I'm here. I've been meaning to come in here for a while, and is everything in here authentic? And then he's got his customer service face on. And then for him to just, like, fucking gut himself in front of her, and like, kill himself in not the most, problem number one, it's not the most expedient way to kill yourself if you're, him, like, he probably should have had something a little bit more, like, committal to do that, but, like, he guts himself in front of her, like, that whole thing, like, the whole thing before that, where the Imperial, spy who's working with Luthen, he comes in and he's like, I've been going through Deidre's files, I have access, I know what's going on, like, they're building this weapon, like, that whole thing is, that whole conversation, it's like, no, I will give you this information, but you need to get me the fuck off of Coruscant, like, me and my wife and my kids, you need to get us all the fuck out of here, like, that whole thing is fantastic. And then the second episode being the extraction of Clea, like, Andor and K2SO getting to Clea on Coruscant, extracting her so they can get the information. It's great. Only for this all to go down to, well, they don't believe in Luthen. What the fuck? Like, if it was Saw Gerrera, I'd be like, okay, well, Saw Gerrera's a bit of a nut job. Like, yeah, he's an extreme, he's an extremist, but he's a bit of a nut job, but at the same time, it's like, that's something that, like, I could buy if it was like, we don't trust Saw Gerrera. But, like, Luthen, I don't see anything that happened in this show that I can recall that people would be like, I don't necessarily trust Luthen to have the best judgment. Like, I don't think there was anyone there who saw Luthen spiral the way he did. Because, like, there was that spiral in the last arc, or 2 arcs ago, was it? Where Clea had to extract the listening device in front of Krennic. Like, that whole thing, like, no one sees that spiraling but Clea. Like, it's just kind of a weird situation. Why would that be the thing that, like, I don't know. It's one of those things I'm like, this is just strange. And you get to that finale, and then it's like, I don't know. No one trusts them, and it's like, what? But I don't think this is laid out well enough. And I think that this is the only time, really, we get to see the seams of. And I think it's brilliant about the show, because this show is supposed to run for 5 seasons. Each 3-episode arc of this season is 3 episodes. Was meant to be one whole season of this show. And they distilled it down from 12 episodes to 3. And I think they did a brilliant job of that. But this last arc is where the seams start to show, because there are a lot of unanswered questions. Maybe I just didn't catch them. But, like, who killed the Imperial spy dude whose name I'm forgetting? Like, was that Deidre, or was that ISB, or, like, what happened there? Like, who was it that killed him? And I don't think we got an answer to that. Like, it would have been cool to get an answer to that, but, was that just, like, did Luthen do that? It's possible. Maybe I just missed it, but, like, he ended up dead, shot, and left on this bench, and it's like, who did that? There's a lot in this last batch of episodes that just kind of feels like we need to bring this show to a landing, and we need to, like, this show needs to end in a place where Andor is headed off to rescue Jyn. that's where the show needs to end. And that's where the show does end. It ends, with that. And, Bix has the baby. I think it's implied heavily that the baby is Cassian's, and that's just heartbreaking because we know Cassian has days to live at this point. Like, in this movie, we know, we know that, coming right after this, he dies. He goes to rescue Jin. They go to Jeddah. They go to find, They go to find, what's his name? Galen. Doesn't Galen die there too? And then they go back to Yavin, and then they go to Scarif, and then everyone dies on Scarif. It's just that death montage of everyone dying, and then we go right into A New Hope. It's one of those things where it's that's just, it's heartbreaking, and they do a good job there playing with the fact that we know Cassian's going to die, and Cassian never got the chance to make this relationship with his kid, or reconnect with Bix, because, and that's all he wanted, was to have this relationship with Bix, and it's that's heartbreaking, and I think that had they played with that a little bit more, that could have been good, but again, it's what do you cut to mix in Bix's story? This is the only batch of episodes that show the seams of, we had to cut a good amount of time from this. Which is unfortunate, because I think that, again, like I said, they fumbled at the 1-yard line. That last episode we've talked about it a lot. I mean, there's an episode I did on what's it called, on 30-minute reviews. I believe it was called The Ending Defines Reception. And it's always going to be the last thing someone sees. It's going to be the thing that they, that they leave with. It's why when you watch a trailer, there's always that money shot right before the end of the trailer of something cool, something that the audience is going to be oh shit, that's awesome, I want to go see that movie. That's how you end up with Spider-Man making his debut in the second Captain America Civil War trailer and all that kind of stuff. The idea that people, TV shows that had such a hold on pop culture, Game of Thrones, How I Met Your Mother, ended so poorly that once the show ended, we just don't talk about them anymore. How I Met Your Mother just ended. No one liked the ending. We don't talk about it. You could have gone into Barnes & Noble during the height of that show and bought a physical copy of the Bro Code with a picture of fucking Neil Patrick Harris on the cover. We don't acknowledge that show anymore. People don't talk about Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was hailed as one of these big high fantasy prestige TV, the first of the high fantasy prestige TV shows that we now take for granted. And it was the thing that showed us, hey, you could make fantasy on a large budget on TV and make it look great and make it profitable. But that last season was so bad, no one acknowledges that show anymore. They talk about House of the Dragon, but no one goes back and is I really want to watch Game of Thrones again. And that's something that keeps me from watching, because I'd never watched Game of Thrones. But I know that show had such a bad last season. I'm I don't know if I'll ever watch that. That's just what this kind of is. And it's one of the most, and that's where I am with this. This last episode is just so weird that it feels it's almost as if this show is kind of not ashamed to be Star Wars, but the Star Wars-ness of it takes a backseat to the point where it's in the last batch we had that episode where it's oh, well, we have to, what's it called? We have to, they meet with the woman who can see the future, kind of, and she's got the Force-sensitive woman, and it's oh shit, that's cool. Now look, here's the thing. I have one theory that I think could be interesting. This kid that Bix has, I think it's implied, if I remember correctly, that Bix has a little bit of the Force in her. She dabbles in the Force. I think this kid could make an appearance down the line. Because this is now a kid who's born a few months before, before A New Hope. So, at Mandalorian times, this kid's like 6 years old. 7 years old. Theoretically, this kid could be in his 40s, his or her 40s, by the time we get to, by the time we get to, New Jedi Order. Because that, like, the whole sequel trilogy takes place over 3 years, I think. Because it's like, The Force Awakens, then immediately after, there's no time skip, it's The Last Jedi, then it's like 1 year, and it's The Rise of Skywalker, which I think is an underrated kind of thing with what went wrong with the sequel trilogy, is that it's like you don't have that extra, you don't have that extra little bit of time to kind of lay out, things in there. Like, there's always these big time jumps between Star Wars movies that let you kind of, like, change the universe in a way that makes sense. But the fact that, like, it's so bizarre, because it's like, Episode 8 starts, and it picks up right after Episode 7, and there's still a crawl, and it's like, but we saw all this in the last movie. Like, what do we have to do a crawl for here? Like, it's a weird choice. But either way, the point is, like, this kid could be, like, 40, 45 by the time we get to New Jedi Order. So could this kid be Force sensitive, and could this kid end up, with Rey? Could this kid end up being a bad guy? Because, like, here's the thing, is that it's like, okay, you show us the baby. Everything about this last episode is entirely about Star Wars. In a way that, like, we get May the Force Be With You from Bail Organa talking to Cassian, which is something that we didn't hear all through this. We get this, everything about this. Like, the episode, the finale is called Jedha Jyn Erso, Jedha Jyn Erso Scarif, or Jedha Jyn Erso Gorman, or something like that. Gorman Scarif Jyn. It's whatever the mantra was that, that Luthen gave to Clea. That's the finale. And all this doesn't even acknowledge, like, how great the whole thing with, like, for them to immediately turn on Deidre and think she's a rebel spy, and that whole thing is just so great. Like, because it's like all this time you spent and all that you committed to being you gave your life, everything to being a member of the Empire. Like, you literally could not have given more to the Empire. You gave, your entire life was committed to them. And for them to, with nothing, no evidence, just vibes, be like, well, you're a spy, so we're going to throw you in prison. It's just brilliant. And it's a shame we're not going to see this character ever again, because, like, this is how someone becomes a rebel. Like, this is how you radicalize this person. Because now you've taken her, you put her in the exact same prison that Andor broke out of in this labor camp. It's just brilliant. But that ends up taking second place to the fact that, like, so much of that episode is just like, well, I don't know, is there a Death Star? Like, what you could have done in 40 minutes was kind of be like, look, we need to lay out. And when I was talking about the fact that, like, the ISB guy definitely killed himself. Like the entire ISB, like, fails so badly in this. And it's because the bureaucracy got so big, and it showed so many faults. And it's like that whole speech, that oh my god, that whole thing is so great. But just so much of the episode is spent do we trust them? Should we trust them? Should we trust Clea? Should we trust that Luthen wasn't just chasing shadows? Should we trust that this isn't just the Empire trying to get us to go out of our way? And it's such a bizarre thing to of information for them to plant, and so intricate that it's why? Nothing we've seen about about ISBs today. ISB seems to be doing very simplistic. It's still pretty intricate, but at the same time, it's ISB's doing pretty simplistic. What's it called? Counterintelligence work. Feeding not patently incorrect information, but just kind of setting people up to do things they shouldn't. And it's if that's the case, then really, what is it? And I think that to an extent this does. I gotta rewatch Rogue One. I haven't watched Rogue One in a while, but I think the finale, one of the interesting things is okay, so we got Yavin now, and we have this intricate system where it's this is going to be our whole thing, but the thing that I think is missing from this is the idea that it's they're looking for a rebel base, and I think I think that was lost here. We don't really get any indication that they're looking for a rebel base, which is unfortunate considering in 3 hours they're looking for a rebel base. It's an odd situation. It's an odd situation. But that's as good a place as any for us to wrap up for today and wrap up on Andor. Look, despite the fact the last episode is iffy, and it's one of those things where I saw someone say who had seen the episodes earlier was oh well, episodes 10 and 11 are some of the best of this show, and I agree. But the finale just kind of lands on its own face. But whatever, it is what it is. So we'll wrap up there for today. Later this week, we are going to finish up. We finish up Andor. We are going to do Tales of the Underworld, which I will watch. I have not yet, but whatever. We will have something to talk about with that. And The Acolyte Wayseeker, which is a new book that just came out from, I think it's Justina Ireland. Who wrote it's a YA, I think, book above Ernesto Rowe. Not mid-grade, but I think it's YA above Ernesto Rowe. But regardless, we'll wrap up there for today. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.